Welcome back to the Coffee Chat podcast, brought to you by the Adventis Financial Modeling Certification. Our mission here at Adventis is to help you break into high finance by providing stories and advice about recruiting, networking, and everything else finance. If you hear something helpful, return the favor by leaving a great review or subscribing to our channel. In this episode, we're going to talk about internships and recruiting. If that's something you're really focused on as well, then you should check out the Coffee Chat newsletter. It's our game-changing newsletter that sends you updates a few times a month with all the latest internship postings. It's also connected to our internship database, which shows you every opening currently available. So learn more and go to adventiscg.com. That's adventiscg.com and click on the Coffee Chat or the Internship Database tabs. And as always, enjoy the episode. All right, welcome, Nik. Great to have you here. We're putting together another great episode of the Coffee Chat by Adventis, where we just have casual networking and coffee chat types of conversations all about how to break into investment banking as an analyst. So again, welcome, Nik. Give us a little background. Tell us where'd you grow up? How'd you end up at Miami of Ohio? And what are you thinking in terms of your career goal after graduation right now?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. My name's Nik Wolf. I'm now a sophomore at Miami University, finance accounting major. From Northeast Ohio area, grew up south of Cleveland on a farm, actually. So, coming into college, I had like zero prior finance experience. No one in my family really was from the industry. So I came in with a clean slate, didn't really know what to expect. Um, Came in, was encouraged by some upperclassmen I knew at the school to pursue banking club at my business school. Kind of from that, learned a lot about the industry, the ins and outs, networking with a lot of bankers at different firms. Some upperclassmen in the club encouraged me to, do the Adventis financial modeling certification. So over winter break, I really dug into that, focused on it heavily, got through it pretty quickly, and ultimately got my certification. And from that, I've learned, I've been in the loop of all this stuff. It's been great so far. For career wise, I really like the capital markets of the investment bank. I like LevFin a lot, and specifically, that's a group I want to go towards. I have a private credit internship this summer, my freshman year summer. So looking to work in the credit stuff like that. I'm really just excited to kind of see what path takes me on.
Okay, awesome. Well, always good to have specificity in terms of your goals, focusing on capital markets, but LevFin specifically. Cool. I like it.
Hmm.
A lot of folks sort of are too broad earlier on. I think it's good to be focused. It doesn't mean you're going to be married to that your whole life, or
Hmm.
even you might even change your mind 6 months from now. That's okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Ultimately, you actually do have a lot of flexibility, but I would argue that it's very powerful to start with a very narrowly focused goal because it just makes your life easier in terms of networking, in terms of planning, how to move forward, and
Yeah,
ultimately
for sure.
you're gonna decide whether that's the right direction for you, regardless, right? So
Hmm.
cool,
Hmm.
man. Well, yeah, I was just kind of looking through your questionnaire, before we jumped on here, and you mentioned that you're at Miami of Ohio, which you described as a non-target school.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a great school and on many dimensions, but it's not Columbia, it's not Harvard, it's not Stanford. There's
Hmm.
most schools aren't, right?
Yeah.
Um, but so yeah, you asked sort of like how can you stand out, and you also asked, you know, you also have a networking question. So let me just before
Hmm.
we go there, when you say stand out as a non-target school student, like what do you mean exactly? Tell me more about where that question came from.
Yeah, yeah. So, as I'm sure you understand, is that at target schools, a lot of the bulge brackets and elite boutiques are, networking at career fairs in person at these institutions. And, at Miami, there's not, I mean, there are some, middle market firms like Fifth Third, Key Bank, stuff like that.
Okay.
But a lot of times when you're, trying to get in some insight into Goldman Sachs, you just sometimes your resume and your emails get just pushed to the side. Kind of just wanted to
Right.
know something that like what makes you stand out as a more of a unique non-target person.
Right. With the bulge brackets. If
Yeah,
that's your
yeah, like
specifically.
hmm
Because, like you said, I mean, well, just listening to you, I realized that your school is actually a core school for some banks, right?
yeah, yeah,
Um, so first off, I would say that's great. Focus on the strengths first. Focus on the strengths of your organization. That is good to hear. You guys are getting some traction with banks through the career center and through the normal process. So that's a
hmm
good thing. And I wouldn't throw that by the wayside. But let me directly answer your question. Um, so the question is how to stand out, especially with the bulge brackets. So I mean, the first let's define the problem you're up against. Before you start talking about how to solve it. But the problem you're up against is not that you aren't a great student or that Miami of Ohio isn't a great university. The problem is a supply and demand issue, right? You have a very limited supply of bulge bracket opportunities and you have a very high demand for students who are equally qualified as you are across
hmm
the country. So to boil it down very simply, um, more than that, that's just supply and demand. More than that, though, you also have the longer history that banks have with schools, right? A Goldman Sachs or a JP Morgan, they have a long history of recruiting at a short list of schools. And that recruiting has been successful for them, right? If it was
hmm
failing, they wouldn't be doing it over and over
yeah,
again. But that said, so just again, I'm painting the picture. That's the real world of what you are in and up against, and you've got to understand that before you can start to worry about solutions.
hmm
Now, the things that are more in that's what's working against you. Um, then you've sort of got right the network effect that happens when these banks recruit from the same list of 10 schools, let's say, for a decade or multiple decades that ends up you end up then with sort of a concentration of people who are alums and then it sort of builds
hmm
on itself, right? So that's again we're just defining what you're up against. I probably didn't say anything that blew your mind that you didn't already know, but
hmm
for everyone listening, but again this is where you have to start. Now what is also true, while banks do have their sort of short list of schools, they do also recruit. They will have a non-target recruiting process, but a lot of times they'll almost treat it as if it's like if there's 10 schools, they kind of treat it like the 11th school, you know, and then it's
yeah,
like this grab bag of like all a bunch of other schools, um, and individuals who are applying. But at the end of the
hmm
day, while you it is definitely a tougher climb because of the things that we've already walked through. At the end of the day, the fundamentals are still the same. And so,
hmm
what do we mean by that? I think the most important thing you can do is get in person, pick where the thing is you have to more clearly define your intention for the search. So let me ask you that. You mentioned bulge
hmm
bracket banks. What cities are you prioritizing, and which banks are at the top of your list?
yeah, yeah. So it's gonna sound funny. It's pretty non-traditional way of thinking, but I'm not really too keen on New York. I really
Okay.
want to go to Charlotte, Atlanta, even somewhere in Texas. I know Dallas is emerging right now. I like Wells Fargo is pretty strong in Charlotte. Same with U.S. Bank. Truist Securities is like a relatively new investment bank that I have networked with a few people there in Atlanta.
Nice.
Been to the office before actually, so it's not necessarily a firm thing. I think location's pretty big for me.
Hmm.
That's got to be one of my top preferences. I just I feel like I drawn to more like warmer weather, so just kind of a little different than the typical Wall Street dreams.
Okay. Well, that definitely helps clarify things. Well, the good
Mm-hmm.
news is you don't have to worry about the bulge brackets because they tend not to be in those markets.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying ignore it, but I guess even if they do have a presence, the office will be very small. and they might not even have an internship program. Depends, but
Yeah.
obviously, uh, if you are interested, you'll need to figure that out through networking because those are the things that tend to change. That might change year by year. Offices open, offices
Hmm.
close, internship programs open and close. It'll always be in New York. It'll always be in the major market,
Right.
like energy, Houston, Chicago, New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles. But the smaller market cities, with respect to the bulge brackets now, which is to me is Goldman, Morgan Stanley, JPM, Bank of America. And then you kind of get you can keep going, but those are the main
Hmm.
ones, obviously.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, honestly, it sounds to me like your search is going to be more like middle market or
Hmm.
upper middle market in those smaller cities. I say smaller,
Yeah.
in the smaller financial market cities.
Hmm.
So the good news is you kind of answered your own question. You don't have to worry about competing against
Yeah.
all the core processes because you're not recruiting for JPM in New York.
Hmm.
That's where all the people at Harvard want to go. So you don't have to worry about that. And I generalize, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. For sure.
so, I mean, it sounds to me like you're on the right track. You're already going off the beaten path. I guess the best way to get an opportunity if you're off the beaten path is to stay off the beaten path. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, don't,
That's
if you're
true.
trying, right? Otherwise, you're sort of like scaling the wall of a giant city instead of going to a local village where they'll just go up and talk to you. Um, and so, I mean, so number one, I would say make sure to talk to. So the key for you, if you're interested in debt capital markets and leverage finance, would be going through all of those middle market, upper middle market, emerging banks. You mentioned sure. Um, Make sure you know who has debt capital markets, right?
Hmm.
Make sure you
Yeah.
know who has the right LevFin desk. Stating the obvious, but don't just assume they do. Like for example, I worked at Baird. Baird doesn't have one.
Right. Hmm.
They do some light advisory in debt capital markets, but they don't have a balance sheet. It's not a big practice for them. You're not going to get a junior year internship. Um, in all
Hmm.
likelihood, I'm not going to say it's impossible. I'm just saying it's not the main beaten path
Yeah. Yep.
compared to M&A, compared to being on a coverage team.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, I guess with that, I mean, it sounds like we've sort of already. I don't know. I was just jumping with your first question, but it sounds like you've already got a
Hmm.
good plan, and I do like that you're focused on those other markets. Do you have plans to travel? When will you be going to these places, whether it be Charlotte or? Sorry, you said Charlotte, Dallas, and what was the third city?
I guess Atlanta. It's not nothing like
ATL.
specifically. It's just kind of like, yeah, a
Yeah, that's a
region,
good market.
the southeast region.
Yeah, you got
Um,
SunTrust, like you
mhm.
said, Fifth Third.
There's even region security, which is pretty interesting to me. They're kind of emerging. They're actually out of Alabama, but they have big presence in Atlanta and Charlotte.
Excellent. And so tell me about the networking you've done so far with these banks.
Yeah, so kind of the unfortunate thing with Truist and even Regions, there's not a lot of Miami alum there. Miami's a huge pipeline to Chicago, as you've probably known. Um, so, a lot of it is just cold emailing and just, praying that someone will get back to you and that this chat's gonna be good, and then it leads into more connections. And, it kind of ended up being like that for Truist, able to speak to I think four people in their office in Atlanta between two people in M&A and then two people in LevFin. Really kind of like both of them. It's a little less of a sweaty firm, I think. I feel like the southern firms are a little have more emphasis on work life balance. That's something I do want to have both. I know it's really funny saying kind of wanting to go in investment banking, but concerning work life balance, but it is something that I've noticed with Southern firms. Also, Raymond James, I've spoken to two M&A people there for real estate investment banking, which is something that's the coverage group I pretty interested in, looking forward. Like, I don't know, pursue that a little bit. But yeah, overall, spend a lot of time in the Southeast. My uncle lives in Atlanta, so that's kind of another reason I would, like to be down there towards some family.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I mean, it sounds like you're on the right track. About how many people you just mentioned several conversations about how many networking conversations total have you had?
Um,
Let's
I
say in the last 6 months.
Yeah. Okay. So I started networking October of my freshman year, so 2 months into college.
Okay.
I would say overall I've had nearly 70.
Oh wow.
And that I wouldn't say 70 in investment banking because originally I was like, calling people in asset management, calling people in
Yeah.
S&T.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, as a total about 70.
Okay. Great. And of the 70, about how many are investment bankers? Like
I would say
actual
probably 30.
30? And
Probably like
these are
M&A.
professionals, people working,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
not just like an upperclassman
No, no,
who
not
had an
just like
internship.
incoming, but like yeah. No, I'd say probably 20 to 30. I'm not sure the exact number.
Okay, I'm just ballpark. I'm trying to. No, it looks like you're off to a
Hmm.
fantastic start. I mean, if you've talked to 20 and you've only finished your first year, 20 to 30, I mean, that's a great start. What would you say is your biggest learning? What's your biggest takeaway talking from those 20 to 30 bankers?
Yeah, one big thing I've learned is that it's really difficult to get a gauge on which coverage groups have like a certain amount of deal flow. What I'm saying is like, Raymond James is known for the real estate investment banking. They have higher deal flow for that, but their consumers is a little weaker. And then, firm like Truist is weaker in healthcare, but better in industrials. It's something that isn't consistent amongst the investment banking industry as a whole. So you really have to take note into what you want out of deal flow, what kind of industry, what coverage group kind of excites you the most. It's something that like keep an eye out on. Also learn that like obviously certain people have or what I should say is that a 35-minute call can go by really fast because you're having a great conversation, and then a 15-minute call can drag on so long. And a lot of them, a lot of times I will have back-to-back calls. Like, today I had a call with someone at Piper Sandler, and it was a great, great chat, but I had to get on a call with someone at Raymond James right after, and I was like, it's kind of disappointing to end it early, but like I said, there's sometimes people can be very good conversationalists and you feel really relaxed, and then some other ones like struggle to fit in 20 minutes of asking 10 questions.
Yes. Yeah. No, great point, and that's a common frustration. I'm sure, right, to no surprise to anybody. But I think you can only really start to put that together when you have as many conversations as you've had. So
Hmm.
ultimately, that's a great thing that you've had enough conversations to experience the highs and the lows, right? The ups and the downs.
Yeah.
Um, but there are things you can do to sort of, I guess, improve the floor of what the worst conversation is.
Hmm.
There are some things. One of the most important things you can do is not have a list of 10 questions to ask.
Hmm.
I don't mean don't prepare. You want to prepare, and it's good to have some emergency, I call them emergency parachute questions.
Hmm. Yeah.
But most of your questions, you should think about it like there's a prompt question that's very open ended to get the conversation going. But once they're talking, I know you've seen this because the conversationalist people are very good at sort of not needing cues from you to keep the conversation going,
Yeah.
but some don't. And so my recommendation to you is get that once that conversation gets going, instead of referring back to your old stale list of questions that has nothing to do with the conversation at hand, instead have a little sticky note right here ready to go.
Hmm.
And when they mention a topic that's interesting, they just say it, anything. We call it a hook. It could be like, oh, just saying the word FactSet or Cap IQ. It's a financial
Hmm.
database. That's a hook. It's a little nugget. Or just saying an industry or saying the name of a specific deal. Okay. All
Hmm.
these are little nuggets of information. Just jot it down. Like, okay, fact set. Okay. Construction deal in Atlanta.
Yeah.
ATL construction deal. And as they're talking, you're not taking notes verbatim. Don't do that. But jot down these little nuggets as you get them. And then when the conversation stops, Now you have a natural follow-up. You can
Hmm.
be like, because that person will tell you, and they mentioned, again, that construction deal in Atlanta, and they mentioned Cap IQ. And now you can be like,
Hmm.
hey, you mentioned Cap IQ. What's some of the training that's available for Cap IQ that you guys put people through?
Hmm.
How is using Cap IQ different from between an analyst and an associate? Or again, I can invent questions, but the most important thing is that you're asking something about what they just talked about. Maybe Cap IQ is a
Yeah.
bad example,
Hmm.
but if they mention a
Yeah, I know what you
construction
mean.
deal in Atlanta, ask about the construction deal in Atlanta. Don't go back to your list of questions.
Oh
Because,
yeah, yeah, 100%.
right?
Hmm.
And a lot of people do that. A lot of people do that, and I think
Yeah.
it's especially for people who are hard to talk to
Hmm. Yeah,
because
that
they
was an error I always made. Like, initially, like when I first started networking, it would just like you said, all these hooks you need to like find cues to continue the conversation and make it natural. Before it was just like felt like a robotic interview for me, and
yeah,
that was
mechanical.
something. Yeah, just repetition ultimately allowed me to like pivot away from that. But yeah, I no joke would be on like Zoom and then like just typing what exactly he said. So I was like, yeah, I need to take like write down everything he said like a transcript, but really that's not what you need to do.
You can't because then you can't pay attention to the conversation.
Hmm.
You're focused on taking notes.
Hmm.
Um, Now, there's a time and a place for that when you're on the desk at the internship and you're listening to a meeting with like 10 managing directors. That's the time where you should just be quiet and take as many notes as possible.
Yeah.
That's the time to do that, not in a one-on-one networking conversation.
Hmm.
But it's great to hear. Look, that's why those reps matter. Is because everybody starts
Hmm.
there, and I'm glad that again you've built in that direction. But
Hmm.
so you
Yeah.
mentioned something else in terms of learning, which I thought was really important as well. That you've learned that every bank and even every location within the same bank is going to have different industry coverage groups or product groups that'll all have very different feels. And I
Hmm.
think that's also something that especially younger, students who are just walking down this journey, just starting to get started, they're not aware of, which is
Hmm.
another one of the really almost magical things that happens through networking is that you learn the real deal in a sense. Like you learn that, say the again I'm you learn that the consumer coverage group in Atlanta at this bank is way bigger than the consumer coverage group at a different bank in a different city.
Right.
And so if you want to be in consumer, go to the place where there's more opportunity. Go to the place where there's
Hmm.
more seats, and you can start to put that together. Um, because there is significant difference, and I've found that too. I'll give you an example at Baird. At Baird, one of the groups that I was always very impressed with, I wasn't part of it. I was in the consumer team. Consumer team's fantastic, by the way, but they
Hmm.
also have a really great industrials practice. And what I loved about the industrials practice is it was actually very what they would call industrial technology focused. So like filter and filtration systems, test and measurement systems. They had all these sub verticals underneath industrials,
Hmm.
and not the traditional industrials. They weren't working with $10 billion chemical manufacturers. That wasn't it. They were going to work with actually the industrial company that made the technology that controlled the flows inside of the giant chemical company,
Yeah. Hmm.
right? And so even within industrials, you'll see a huge variety of the different types of companies that the banks will work with in the sub verticals. And that's where you
Hmm.
really want to start to get what are that's a great question for any coverage banker is like what are the sub verticals? How do you guys divide up the consumer group or the industrials group or the real estate
Hmm.
group, like you had mentioned?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, exact same thing as you mentioned happened with me today with a person at Piper Sandler. She's in healthcare technology, and she was like, "Yeah, healthcare is huge in Minneapolis. That's our office. Um, they have healthcare consumer and healthcare tech, and then I
mm,
think there's two other ones. But yeah, it's exactly as you mentioned.
um, and what's really important about like that Piper conversation is you've got to pick up on that lingo that she's using in terms of how they describe their own groups. Because you'll
Hmm.
see that let's take five different healthcare groups and five different banks. Ultimately, a lot of them are covering the same subverticals, but they're going to call them, potentially call them even slightly different things. And
Yeah.
so one of the best ways to get in good with a bank is to learn about how does the bank refer to itself? What is some of that internal jargon that only that bank uses?
Hmm.
That's one of the things that you have to start to pick up on with all these networking conversations and include in your notes. I would even keep
Yeah.
something separate. Like when you hear a buzzword, when you hear a new word, like, oh, I haven't heard that one before, like you've got to write that down and don't
Hmm.
hesitate to ask about it. Like, oh, you mentioned healthcare fintech. Like, oh, how do
Yeah.
you guys look at that? What is that? What is that? How is that different from traditional fintech? Um,
Hmm.
but you've got to pick up on those buzzwords, or should I say, you'd be well advised to pick up on those buzzwords, and then ask about them, because look, don't forget, you're still a student. You should don't you know don't uh, yeah, you're still a student. It's okay to not know everything. You're
Right.
not
Hmm.
supposed to know everything. You're not actually
Hmm.
supposed to know anything about the banks. That's why you're doing the networking conversations. So
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, just make sure that you are coming across as humble and curious. And that's all about asking those questions, but most importantly, about something they just said, especially if it piques your interest. Um,
Hmm.
one thing to think through too is you had mentioned, when you talk to folks in these different coverage groups, you'll end up figuring out which industry groups you're more or less interested in. And I 100% agree with that. So you're going to want to, yes, find some areas of natural interest, but you've also got to find those areas of opportunity, and they might
Hmm.
not align. And just remember, like, an interest area without opportunity is worthless. So,
Fair enough.
the interest,
Yeah.
you got to have the opportunity there. There's got to be seats, there's got to be openings, they've got to have churn and throughput. And how many new interns do they take on every year? Great question to ask, right?
Hmm.
Especially
Hmm.
if someone's telling you about some cool new industry group, or maybe not cool new to you. I mean, some interesting industry group that is really sticks out for you and piques your curiosity. Make sure you ask them. Try to get a sense for numbers. How many interns do you think that group takes on in a year? About, you know, and they'll tell you, oh, probably only two. Like, okay, that's very different than 37, right?
Right.
Um, and now okay, there's a little tiny sliver of opportunity there, but I can't put all my eggs in that basket. But the
Hmm.
SunTrust, whatever industrials group or healthcare group is massive, and I know there's a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah.
So,
Definitely true.
so
Hmm.
cool. What else? So I think you had mentioned here. Now you're talking to a lot of networking. Excuse me. You've talked to a ton of people already, which is great. You
Hmm.
also asked, who should I reconnect with and when?
Hmm.
Um, so up to this point, how many folks were you networked with maybe a few months ago? How many have you followed up with, and how has that follow up gone?
So yeah, as I've mentioned, I've probably, networked now for about 7 months or something like that. Had about 70 calls. Um, Kind of what I'm thinking. I reached out to two already. I wrote down
Okay.
my 20 best calls. The ones that lasted the longest, the ones that gave you good connections to like continue the chain. Good ones that like want you to reach out to them. So I'm making an active effort to reach out to two every week this summer. Make pretty
Of
genuinely.
the 20, of the
Yep.
top 20.
So I do have a list. Spreading out. From what I've heard is it's good to reconnect within 3 to 6 months. Only with like the good calls, of course. So and at the firms that I like the most. So yeah, that's why I've been actively, trying to figure that out. I would just love to see like kind of what your input would be.
Yeah, I think I've got two things for you to think about. The first one would be, think about every person that you've talked to as a subscriber to your newsletter. All right.
Okay.
Now you're not going to publish a weekly newsletter. That's not what I'm saying. But just start with that in your head. And what
Hmm.
you want to do is every few months or every month, send an update to your whole newsletter list when you have something to say. That could be something like, I'm starting my summer internship at whatever, right?
Hmm.
Or I got an offer And I don't mean your big junior year off. I mean, I guess, what are you doing this summer, for example?
I have an internship in private credit abroad at
That's
a
right.
firm
Private.
called DeBear Capital Partners.
Awesome. And you said abroad? Where is that?
Yep, it's in London.
You're in London for the summer.
Hmm.
Okay. Perfect. That's awesome. So take that message and say, hey, literally to all 70, you could do this as a BCC. It's going to be better to do it one by one, and it'll take you some time, but chunk it up. But
Hmm.
but you're not customizing much. You're just changing out the first name. That's
Right.
pretty much it. Or maybe you're changing out the month that you connected in. Or
Hmm.
I even like to generalize more like, hey, it was great to connect with you last winter. So anyone you talk to from November
Yeah.
to March or February is fine.
Hmm.
Um, but hey George, last great to connect with you last winter. Just wanted to give you an update. I'll be starting my summer internship in private credit at De Beers. Did I say De Beers?
Yep.
In London. I'm
Hmm.
really excited about it. I'll be sure to keep you informed down the road. That's it.
Hmm.
Um, Again, think of it more like a newsletter where you're pushing an update to them. So let me say it a different way. Don't One thing to be careful of when someone's already talked to you, they've already given you their time, right? They've already given you
Hmm.
something. So be careful going back to the well a second time and asking for more. Instead, what I recommend you do is give them something.
Hmm.
And when you
Okay.
send that update, you're giving them something. You're giving them an update. They probably forgot about the conversation, but you're somewhere in the back of their mind. Give them an
Hmm.
update. And then they're just going to think, oh, Nik, yeah, I remember talking to him. Oh, cool. I hope he has a great time this summer. And they don't have to respond because you didn't ask for
Hmm.
anything. You're not asking for
Yeah.
anything. You're reaching out to them. You're keeping that connection alive. And I would do that with 100% of your conversations.
Hmm.
Unless someone yelled angrily at you and said, go to hell, don't ever talk to me again. If that happened, then probably
Haven't
take
had
them off the
that,
list.
fortunately.
What's that?
Haven't had that, fortunately.
You haven't. Well, then you haven't been aggressive enough. I'm teasing. Um, no, but like that's an unsubscribe. Okay, so that person unsubscribed from your newsletter. But
Yeah.
everybody else, even if the conversation was wonky, I guarantee you that they don't remember it and you do. So just forget about it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
write every single person 100% because you never know who is going to say, "Oh, talk to my buddy Francine who's there. You guys got
Yeah.
to have lunch." And now, boom, you got you got a connection. You're already getting your social calendar set up for the summer.
Hmm. Hmm.
There's going to be people who know people, or I know someone else who's in London. They're at this bank, Lloyd's, whatever. Um, like you're going to open up some new doors when
Hmm.
you do that. And at the very least, you're staying at the top of somebody's mind. They're going to be impressed that you've got a cool internship this summer, and you're continuing to build a brand with that,
Hmm.
again, with your newsletter subscriber base. You've got to build your own personal brand, which is a brand of you're on top of things. You're keeping them informed. You're not asking for anything. You're out there
Hmm.
accomplishing in the world. They'll be lucky to have you come to their bank someday in the future, right? That's the sort of air that you're trying to put out.
Yeah.
So that was the first way to follow up is by not asking for anything. Instead, give them an update, but wait till you have a real update. And I think that your summer internship is a fantastic update. So anyone who you haven't told, I would
Hmm.
say in the next 10 days, like let everybody know. Write one email. It should be probably no more than 5 sentences.
Hmm.
If it's longer than 5 sentences, then I think you're just wrong. Um, let's just put it
Yeah.
unless somebody asked you for something, and even then, your message should still only be 5 sentences, and then sign off, and then say see details below, and then if they ask for details of some sort, then put them below everything and be really clear where the details are.
Hmm.
Um, Obviously, the mistake lots of folks make before they've really been in the business world and done a lot of business writing tends to be they feel like they have to sort of puke their whole life story up in this email, and it's like 3 4 5 paragraphs, and then at the very bottom they're like, and I'd really like to have lunch sometime. all at the bottom,
Yeah.
and like no one ever gets that far down, so you never get any you never get any meetings set. So,
Yeah.
um,
Concise is, yeah, definitely a very key thing.
well, it's honestly about respect.
Hmm.
To be frank, if you write me some 5 paragraph email, I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, this is
Exactly.
ridiculous. You're wasting my time. Like, you, think about what did you want to tell me, and just tell me,
Hmm.
and then sign off. So,
Yeah, 100%.
um,
100%.
but yeah, that's the best way to follow up. Think about this network as a whole, and give them key updates. The next update you should give is at the end of the summer.
Hmm.
Um, you know, maybe say something about one really cool thing you did in your internship, and that's you're starting
Yeah.
school, and you'll be pursuing this, and then tell them what your goal is for recruiting. I'm going to be
Yep.
pursuing, like you said, whether it's LevFin or whether it's middle market investment banking opportunities in Charlotte, Atlanta, and Dallas. And
Hmm.
just tell them what you're looking for, regardless of who they are. It doesn't matter if they're in Minneapolis. It doesn't matter if they're in Chicago.
Hmm.
Regardless of who they are, you're going to want to make sure that you give them those updates. So that's the first thing.
Yeah.
And I bet just doing that will produce more calls for you.
Hmm. Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
100%.
It
No,
will
that's a
probably produce some
great
calls
way
that
to think of it.
you didn't expect. So
Yeah,
awesome.
for me, I think it's a challenge because I feel like it's not a transactional kind of relationship because they're I feel like I'm ultimately wanting more out of them than they want out of me because I they have more to offer. They're in the industry. They have more leverage. They could be the ones that push my resume. And it's kind of hard for me to see myself as, providing something to them, which ultimately I know you kind of mentioned like the second time you reach out isn't like you're not asking for more. A lot of times I think I struggle to think of how I can provide something valuable to them.
Right. It's probably not going to be crazy valuable for them, but the
Hmm.
idea is provide something to them instead of asking something from them.
Hmm.
You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
it doesn't have to be much. Now, because when you're asking for something, what are you asking for? Usually just asking for 15 to 30 minutes of time and a little bit of advice.
insight.
That's
Yeah.
actually a relatively small ask. So when you give
Hmm.
something to them, it's going to be smaller. It's just that's okay. But the point is, like, you're just being human, and you're being
Hmm.
diligent, and you're being thoughtful. And again, it's just going to be, I'll tell you, it's going to be a breath of fresh air for that banker to read your message, because most of the time they're getting a message from a student who's asking for something
Hmm.
instead of a student who's giving them something. Even if all
Yeah.
you're giving them is an update on what you're up to. Um,
Hmm.
the way you're actually doing something for them, would be helping them engage with their network. Because when you tell something, again, you're going to London this summer. If let's say they want to say one of their best friends is in London, now you've
Hmm.
given them a reason to reach out to their friend and say,
Hmm.
"Hey, I was talking to this kid, Nick. He's a great guy. You guys should try to meet for lunch over the summer." And they're sending a text message to a friend of theirs from business school or from undergrad who they haven't connected with in a few years. So
Hmm.
that's a subtle thing that you can give them.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's great, valuable advice. I've never really thought of that, like, it's the whole news article thing, but that's a very
Eh.
good way to think of it.
Let's say send them a news article. Sure, that's more of a homework assignment. You're giving them a reading assignment. You're like, yeah, send me your notes on this reading assignment I'm giving you. Right? That's you
Yeah,
know
what are your takeaways?
you know but if they ask you for it, now I would say if they ask you for it, if you bring up some type of white paper that you found in, if you're having a natural conversation, and you bring up this white paper that you read and how valuable it was, and A, B, and C, and they're like, oh, that's really, really cool, I would love to see that, please
Hmm.
send it to me. Okay, bang. Now you're giving them something.
Right.
But don't hold yourself to that high of a standard. That's actually relatively tough to pull off. And if you have 70 conversations, I don't know how many times that's happened. Has it happened once? Maybe once or twice?
For them to reconnect, like telling me
No, for
something.
them to ask you to send you something, to send them
Oh,
something.
I mean, it's only been like resume or something like, especially if I
Sure, send me your resume.
LinkedIn message them, they're like, yeah, send me your resume and I'll give you feedback or something like that.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, another note for you. When you send your update after the summer, include an
Hmm.
updated copy of your resume.
Hmm.
Just
Yeah.
include it.
Hmm.
And you'll have the summer internship on there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's
Yeah,
some
for sure.
specific projects and things that you've done over the summer and sort of
Hmm.
mention one or two of them in the email. And
Hmm.
again, you're not asking for an interview. You're not asking for a hookup. You're not asking for a connection. You're not asking for anything. You're just
Hmm.
giving them an update. The ask is actually implied, but you're doing them a favor because you're not making them talk to you. And now they can get that in September and they can say, oh, yeah, I remember this. I remember Nik. I talked to
Yeah.
him. Seems like a good guy. Oh, looks like he had a really great internship. Looks like a really strong candidate. They might not even write back to you. They'll just hit forward right over to HR.
Okay. Fair enough.
And you didn't even ask.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's
But it
something
can't
I,
happen if you don't send that update.
yeah. Yeah. No, definitely do that.
And that's all of them, 170, all 70. Now, okay, so that's sort of the what I would call the low touch follow up, meaning like you're responding to them, but you're not writing. It's not customized to them. It's not personal, right?
Hmm.
Then for those 20, that's more up to you. You said the 20 conversations you had that were really high quality, you really enjoyed them.
Hmm.
Maybe the banks you're more interested in. Those I would recommend doing the same concept with the same update, but layering in a little bit more of a personal update. Um, if you want to ask them for something, here's how to do it. It's got to be really specific.
Hmm.
Of so the opposite of this would be reaching out and saying, "Hey, I'd love to just reconnect to catch up.
Hmm.
We haven't talked for 4 months."
Hmm.
It's too generic. It doesn't mean anything. I'm wondering if I'm receiving that. I'm like, wait, why do you want to? Wait, what? How? I don't understand.
Hmm.
How can I
Yeah.
help you?
Yeah.
I'm
What are we
just
gonna talk
confused.
about?
What are we going to talk about?
Hmm.
Um, Instead, like let's say you wanted to reach out to somebody today. And when do you start your internship?
I start June 1st.
Okay, so you got about 10 days, 11 days.
Hmm.
So, and what's one thing, pick something that you're trying to learn about related to setting yourself up for success at the internship.
Yeah, I guess just overall, learning credit analysis.
Okay, credit analysis. Okay,
Mhm.
to stay on that. Hey, I would love to hear more thoughts about. I'm trying to prepare for my internship that starts on June 1st. My goal is to talk to two people about credit analysis. Would you be up for sharing your thoughts and ideas?
Mhm.
And now you've given a time frame, you've asked them something specific. They can already see how this is going to help you and how it's going to have a positive impact for you. People care. They care about you, but they care about their time. They're happy to invest their time in you, but it's got to be for a clear purpose.
Mhm.
And when you set the email up like that, right, now the purpose is clear. They might even come back to you and say, actually, Nik, I don't know that much about credit analysis, but go talk to this person.
Yeah.
And they
Mhm.
know all about it. And now you're actually doing your networking, but you're also helping to prepare for your summer internship so that
Yeah.
you do better when you do hit the ground.
No, that's very valuable. Kind of my mindset was like, for a while I was thinking, oh yeah, I'm gonna just call as many people as I can and then apply to these jobs as a sophomore and then re-email them and be like, hey, by the way, I applied to this job. But
Hey,
I don't really think that's like, yeah, like, something that like the in
that's
between
very
part.
transactional, right?
Right. I mean, but like, I've always had the mentality that these coffee chats are like, I'm not going to land the job without, having connections inside the company. And I always, that was kind of like a bad way of thinking of it, but
No.
trying to like shift my mindset to more like, how can I, be more personal with them and provide more value to them than rather just like, having someone that likes you internally.
Well, I hear what you're saying. It's a common misconception. It's nuanced, though. I want to be clear. It's very nuanced. It's you mentioned the word connection and you mentioned sort of the word people like me. Just remember, like, yeah, they want to hire you if they like you, but it's not just because they like you as a person. It's because you're qualified and
Hmm.
you're not a jerk. All right. Those are the two
Yeah.
requirements. So, um,
Yeah.
everybody wants people who are skilled and not a jerk. Everybody does.
Hmm.
So that's number one. Number two is you're not looking for a hookup. You're not looking for a special treatment, right? You're not looking, that's not what networking is. That's not what a connection is. Oh, I got a connection. They're going to hook me up. Like I used to, that's what, back when I was in the army a long time ago, that's what I
Hmm.
thought networking was back then. I thought it was a bunch of people doing each other favors and scratching each other's backs. There are places where that happens, but it's not in highly competitive playing fields that are level. And that's what
Hmm.
the investment banking recruitment process is. It's a very much a well-regulated market. For the again, I would argue that if you make that assumption, you're going to be right the vast majority of the time. And so the way you should think about it is you're building a personal brand in order to help make that person's life easier.
Yeah.
How are you making their life easier? Well, because you had what you first off, you didn't ask them for 7 conversations. You had one conversation, and then you sent them a handful of updates that show that you're the type of person who's going to succeed in that bank. And now, again, they look good because they're going to pass you over to their boss, they're going to pass you over to their HR person, they're going to introduce you to a friend of theirs, and you will make them look good when that person says, "Oh, I talked to Nik when you said, oh, really great guy." Like
Hmm.
now you're making that banker look good. So again, it's not about them doing you a favor. You're actually helping them in a very tiny, nuanced way. Um, but that's what this whole thing is about: is you building your brand. It's not about getting people to like you. It's actually more about getting people to respect you.
Hmm. Yeah.
Is if we're gonna focus on the language there and really getting into the essence of what's going on here. You're building a brand which is around professionalism, excellence, efficiency, accuracy, which ultimately commands respect. They're not going to hire somebody they like. They're going to hire
Hmm.
somebody they respect.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And kind of like as you mentioned, like you said, your mindset of networking was like scratching each other's back. It's the same thing with me. Is I thought it was something like you hop in a call with somebody and show to them that you're not a jerk, and they're like, "Oh wow, this guy would be nice to be, in the same office with." Like it was kind of a shallow mindset, a
Right.
shallow attitude toward it. Like it's a lot deeper than that.
It really is. It really is. Absolutely. Um, oh, it's great. And then the only way you're able to figure that out is because you've talked to so many people.
Yeah, yeah, it's the only
That's
way.
really important. So, okay. Well, what you've got a couple of things on here, but what else is on your mind? I mean, what are you most concerned about as you go into the summer or go into sophomore year that we haven't discussed yet?
Yeah, it's more so something in the, when you're on the desks, you really just kind of been wondering about how do you avoid burnout. Obviously,
Yeah.
investment banking is super intensive, with a lot of opportunities, a lot of skills that you learn. But, it does take a toll on your health. And especially, for me, I feel like I'm someone that values like sleep and, working out 6 days a week. It seems like those two don't go together very well.
Uh, I hear you. I hear you. There's definitely some tension there between those two. That's how I'd like to call it. There's some tension. You call it work-life balance. That's kind of a misnomer. Obviously it's a typical buzzword. Um, you know, I've heard it also referred to as work-life integration. Like, how do you kind of put it all together? Like, because that's
Hmm.
really more what it is. Um, Sometimes if you think of balance as like a scale, well,
Yeah.
sometimes the work side is going to be, like that. It's going to be the much heavier weight of the scale. Well, a couple things to think about. Um, Number one is do the hard work to improve your own efficiency and accuracy.
Hmm.
That starts with Adventis, which you've already done. Being able to use Excel without a mouse, being able to use Excel accurately. That's number one. Number two, in terms of again improving your skills. knowing those shortcuts beyond Excel. They're going to be PowerPoint shortcuts, Word, whatever
Hmm.
the tools are of your trade. Learn those technical tools of your trade. Learn that database program, whether it's FactSet, whether it's CapIQ, whether it's there's other ones out there.
Hmm.
Know what the company that you're going to. You've got to know what they use in advance, and there's basically always free training associated with these things. I guarantee you on YouTube or even directly through that company's website, you can sign up for maybe a free training license, or maybe you can get early access through the company that you have an offer
Hmm.
for. But whatever you can do, get familiar with those technical tools because you're the one who's going to be in and around them. So there's a very tactical answer to your question, which is get efficient with the things you know you're going to be using every day.
Hmm.
That's the foundation. Because if you're not efficient with that stuff, you're screwed.
You're wasting time. Yeah.
You have no chance of having any kind of balance of anything. You're going to be there at 7 in the morning. You're going to be there till midnight because it takes you twice as long to do everything that everyone else is doing. You're going to be working longer hours. You're going to be getting less done. You're going to be more stressed. You're going to be more frustrated, and things aren't going to go well. And that's a vicious cycle that then only gets worse.
Hmm.
All right. So that's number one. The number two is make sure you're taking care of yourself. There is a minimum amount of sleep. It's maybe a little different for everybody. You don't need 8 hours, but you need to be getting your 6 hours. Absolute minimum 4 hours. But sustainably, you know, you want to be more at that 6 hour mark. And working out is going to be absolutely critical. When you
Hmm.
go work out, that's part of your body's whole process to be more focused in when you are working,
Yeah.
right? You're going to get
Hmm.
more done if you work out. If you let's say you work a 12-hour day versus a 15-hour day, really you're going to be if you work out and then if you work out and have a 12-hour day, you're going to get more done than not working out and working a 15-hour day, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That
That makes
that
sense.
is not crazy. Okay, I'm not saying it's every day is going to work out like that, but that isn't crazy because your mind is more clear, you're more focused, you're able
Hmm.
to stay heads down and really crank through something. If you're off and you don't get that, that again, that piece that your body needs to do its best work, then you're going to be more distracted. You're going to pick your phone up more often. You're going to look. You're just going to be less efficient and get less done. And
Yeah.
so, don't fall into that trap of just working, 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 and letting your mental health slip, letting your focus slip, letting your interest and your passion and your curiosity. Once all that goes away, it's going to be really hard to maintain.
Right.
So those are probably the two biggest things, but don't be under any illusion. Yeah, Southern Bank might have quote better work-life balance, and they're all telling you that. And sure, oh, I read it on the website. It says work-life balance. Okay, you know
Yeah.
what? Sorry, but none of that shit matters. Like at the end of the day, this is investment banking, and it's hard, and there will be long hours, and will there be differences across banks? Absolutely. Will there be differences across coverage groups or product groups? Absolutely. There
Hmm.
will be big differences, but we're not talking the difference between 100 hours and 30 hours. That's not the delta. The delta is going to be between 100 hours and 75 hours. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, so it's still banking, and I wouldn't and don't use honestly, I wouldn't use the words work-life balance. I would sort of delete them from your vocabulary.
Basic.
Um,
Yeah.
don't say it. Just don't mention it up. Don't bring it up. It's not going to help you in your networking and in your interviews and even on the job. Just don't say it.
Hmm.
Instead, it is fine to talk about, like, hey, when a good question to ask during network, instead of asking about work life balance, instead ask about, like, hey, when during the day have you found it's the best time to get a workout in? Is it early in the
Okay.
morning? Is it late in the evening? Like, what have you found that works for you?
Hmm.
That would be a
No,
better
that's
way to
great.
frame it.
That's a great question. Yeah. Definitely something I should do.
and ask a bunch of people. And some people are like, "No, I haven't worked out in 6 months, and I've gained 25 pounds, and I'm eating my Big Mac." Okay, some people are going to say that, but some people are going to be more dedicated and be like, "Yeah, you know what? I found that the only time I can do it is between 7:30 and 8:30 in the morning, and that's it. And if I don't do it then, it's not going to happen."
Hmm.
Um, or maybe it's in the evening. I guess to give you what I found for myself is, but this was more, I'm not a huge morning person, so getting up at 5 a.m. just was tough. And it was tougher when I'm going to bed late at night. So I actually went for runs at night, is what I did. Because I'm more of
Hmm.
a runner, distance runner. And I would go and work until, a lot of nights I would get to the office at 8 or 8:30 and leave at 7 or 8 at night, and then go back and work from home until like 11 or even 12 sometimes, and then go for a run for an hour and go to bed at like 1 o'clock, and then I'm back up
Yeah.
at 6, 7, doing it all over again.
Hmm.
So that was what worked for me personally. But again, you're a different person, and I would encourage you to ask a bunch of people that question and hear all their different answers.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. I've actually felt like work-life balance is such a just basic, annoying question that's just thrown around way too much. And like a really ironic thing in investment banking, kind of a question. It's like, dude, you gotta know what you're getting into. So yeah, I know what you're saying with that.
I mean, you're at the well. So let me say it different. You're at the wrong point of your life to start worrying about work-life balance in how most people mean it. I mean, you're young. You don't have a lot of I'm making assumptions. So if I'm wrong, call me out. But most folks who are in college don't have a lot of responsibilities other than taking care of themselves,
Hmm.
and taking care of their goals. Right. That's a wonderful thing. That's your opportunity to dig in, work hard, learn a ton, meet a ton of people, and that's going to be your version of work-life balance. It's going to be a lot of work, but that work is really that it's starting to become a huge is a huge part of your
Valuable
life.
thing.
So
Yeah.
and it's an intentional decision that you've made, right?
Hmm.
No, this isn't being forced on you.
Oh
You
yeah,
could get
yeah.
you could get a job working 35 hours a week. That's not that hard actually. Um, and so embrace that. You know what I mean? Embrace that you've already brought intention to this decision. You've talked to a ton of people. You know this is the right direction for you. So you just got to go for it. But keep yourself healthy. But that's ultimately about staying productive and staying focused and trying to keep that balance.
Hmm.
Um, whew,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, definitely with your time being you know, what your intentions are with your time, you valuable time, very scarce. Like really something you need, probably an attitude you need to take up is that 24 hours in a day is really short, and it's something that I'm sure investment banking you realize very quickly that everything's getting crunched, and efficiency is super key.
yeah. Well, it's just fundamental. It's fundamental.
Hmm.
I Yeah, but don't forget about those other technical tools. Like yes, Excel, yes, PowerPoint, but I'll tell you the database programs. Um, that's the other thing to be asking during your networking is what are the primary tools that analysts are using to get most of their work done?
Hmm.
What are those technical tools? Are they using AI? Um, I don't even like that term AI anymore, but like there's hundreds of AI tools out there now. That is very different than when I was in banking. Probably they'll have pretty strict rules about what tools you can and cannot use. Um, as they should, especially when you're dealing with confidential information and all different types of regulatory restrictions. So I don't ask in your networking about these things. I don't
Hmm.
have an up to date version of that because it's changed a lot over the last couple of years.
Right.
But when you hear about a tool and you've heard about it several times and you don't know anything about it, now is the time to do the research and do whatever you can to get familiar with it. And maybe it's an internal tool that only they use and you can't access it until you get on the job. Okay, fine. But when you get in that first week on the job, hit it hard, do the voluntary training. Almost all these tools are going to have a help desk. an orientation window that you pop out with lots of videos. Like, dig into it and learn how to use the tool. Learn how to do the things analysts need to know how to do. Don't expect them to train you on it. Don't
Yeah.
expect them, don't expect to get on some conveyor belt and just go along for the ride and they'll tell you everything you need to know. That isn't how it works.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
it's on
actually, you
you.
don't want that. You don't want that because when you
True.
do it yourself, that's your opportunity to distinguish yourself. That's how you build your own personal brand and you start to differentiate yourself from your peers.
Hmm. Hmm.
Just imagine you're in a meeting with a vice president or an associate and they're talking about how this technical thing needs to get done, and the next thing you know, you're sharing your screen and you're in the tool and you're doing it, as opposed to
Hmm.
taking notes and be like, oh, okay, I'll have to look at that. Oh, okay, interesting. Oh yeah, I'll get right on that. Do you see the difference between those two?
Oh yeah, 100% active and passive.
I mean, but the person who's
Hmm.
taking notes, they think that they're active.
Yeah. Hmm.
They think they're crushing it. Oh yeah, I'm so on top. I got my notepad. I'm writing things down. That's great. As opposed to the person who's already doing it and is already halfway done because
Hmm.
they're already familiar. So cool, man.
Yeah, 100%.
What tools? We'll say for where you're going this summer. You said De Beers. What kind of tools do you expect to be using on the job this summer?
Yeah, definitely mainly Excel, probably a little bit of some decks, considering that I probably will be giving a little bit of the pitches to, higher ups. I think for my role is I'm like shadowing an analyst, just more so just running ratio stuff like that, multiples from, what we can get from these private companies that
Okay.
they will be lending to. And yeah, just benchmarking stuff like that.
Okay. What's your confidence level on that? It didn't seem very high. Sounded like you're going to be
I feel
shadowing.
good. I feel
Okay,
good about
sounded
Excel.
like you'd be shadowing an analyst, and so pretty much means that you're going to do what they tell you to do.
No, I feel good about doing I mean it's obviously a small firm, so I think I can get a lot of
Is it?
yeah, I know the office is like, relatively small. So I think I can get a lot of good hands-on experience of like, doing the dirty work, doing all the Excel stuff that I do enjoy doing, like, through all the stock pitch competitions I've done this semester. Yeah,
Okay.
it's yeah,
Well,
that's probably primarily what I'm doing.
just be careful making. I'm not suggesting you are making an assumption. I'm not talking about you. This is more general guidance. But be careful to make those assumptions based on your networking calls and be open to it being completely different when you get on the ground. Because chances are what's going to happen is you're going to have an analyst, you're going to work directly with them, they're going to be on 5 projects. You have no idea what needs to be done on each of the projects.
Mhm.
And they're very unlikely to say, hey, go rebuild this model for me and then put it straight in front of their managing director, right? That's not going to happen.
Mhm.
Instead, focus on figuring out where you can add value and communicate that to the analyst. What I mean is more like they aren't going to know what your skills are unless you know this person really well already and you've already worked with them. But chances are, if you just get assigned to an analyst, again, they're not going to know that much about you. They don't know what you can and can't do. So when you get in there, make sure that you're doing the obvious things, taking notes when needed, going in above and beyond and figuring out your technical tools. But then you need to raise your hand and tell them where you can contribute
Mhm.
in an informed way, though. I don't mean generally like, hey, if you ever need any help with Excel, let me know. Okay, that sounds dumb. Don't
Yeah.
say that. But instead, or with a model, or with whatever, a LevFin model, or a LBO, or whatever. Don't do that. Instead, make it more context dependent or context reliant. When you come out, let's say, because typically what happens is you'll go into a meeting and it'll be a bigger meeting with a team of maybe 5 people. You'll have couple senior people, couple junior people, and your job is to take notes and listen. Coming out of that, you'll probably then go huddle with the analyst and figure out how you guys are going to attack the work that just came out of that meeting.
Mhm.
Right? That's how, remember, shit goes downhill, right? So it comes down, and then the analyst has it. Your analyst, who's in charge of you. At that point, think back to all the things you guys just discussed in the meeting or that came out of the meeting that you listened to. align that with the technical tools that you have in your arsenal, and then say, hey, you know what? I could do this. I was thinking, I know how to use this tool. Would it be helpful if I did that? And it's related to what that just came out of that meeting and the tool you already did your orientation session on your own the night before.
Excuse me, let me close the door.
No, you're good. Okay. Do you know what I'm saying? So you did an orientation session the night before. You stayed up late on one technical tool, and then the next day, ideally, you're seeing an application for how to use that technical tool that next day. And this is like a perfect scenario, but this is sort of what you're trying to emulate.
Yeah.
The point is, after the meeting and all the tasks come out, you need to raise your hand and say, hey, I think I can help with that. Would you like me to take a first stab at it? Now, they might say, no, don't worry about it. I got it. Instead, I need you to do this. Fine, cool. But the point is, you're leaning forward, you're being proactive, you're thinking hard about how you can contribute, and you're coming up with ideas. I'll say 2 out of 3 times, instead of saying no, don't, they'll say, yeah, actually, that'd be great. You run with that. I'll take the other stuff. And again, now you're putting your best, you're putting a strong foot forward. You're building the brand you want to build instead of being passive and hoping that things work out.
Yeah, and just not being dead weight. Like that's why I
Yeah.
think in some cases, if you're just shadowing your analyst, you can just be dead weight and kind of like you're not really doing anything.
And more scary than that is you could be dead weight and not even know it.
Yeah,
You could be dead weight and think that you're awesome. And that
false
can be, I would
confidence.
say
Yeah,
I would argue actually most people who are dead weight on a team actually do think that they're awesome. Have you
yeah.
heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect?
I have not, but
Okay, yeah, I need you to Google that immediately after this call, and don't be a member of the Dunning-Kruger club, because the problem with being a member of the Dunning-Kruger club is that you don't know you're a member.
oh gosh.
So, but it's interesting. It's about how confidence relates to experience.
Mhm.
How
Yeah,
confidence
yeah.
relates to experience. And basically what happens is when you get a little bit of experience, your confidence shoots out the roof. Way too
Yeah, yeah.
high. And then when you get a little more experience, think about your networking journey. You have a couple good networking calls, you're like, oh, I got this. I'm the best networker that's ever been. I'm amazing.
Yeah.
And then you have a couple bad calls and you're like, oh, geez, this is actually way harder than I
I'm
thought that
actually the
was.
worst. Yeah, yeah.
I'm actually the worst. Then you come crashing down. But they've done a ton of research on this. It's a real
Hmm.
science-based psychological effect called the Dunning-Kruger effect. And it
Yeah.
is we are all guilty to some extent. But in the banking context, my main point is to let you know that people will be dead weight, and most likely they don't even know that they are. So you have to go
Hmm.
above and beyond to make sure that's not you. So cool.
Yeah.
All right, Nick. Well, hey, let's. This is great. Really,
Yeah.
we got to wrap up here. Appreciate your time. I hope this was valuable.
No, super valuable.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, stay in touch. Connect on
Hmm.
LinkedIn, and
Hmm.
wishing you the best of luck.
Yeah, Ben, thank you so much for the time. Thanks for all this valuable information. I will look up the Dunning-Kruger Club.
I love it. In this episode, we talked a lot about internships and recruiting. And if that's something you're struggling with as well, then you should check out the Coffee Chat newsletter. It's our newsletter that sends you updates a few times a month with all the latest internship postings. What's better is it's connected to our internship database, which shows you every opening currently available. And these are all the openings for internships in high finance across the nation. If you'd like to learn more, head to adventiscg.com and click on the Coffee Chat or Internship Database tabs.